You're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome back to RBLR Lightning. My name is Jay Bricker. Alongside me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Matt Gannon. Matt, welcome into the show. How you doing today, my friend?
Misery loves radio. I've been better. I've been worse overall. I'm happy that the season is back up and running. Could have asked for better results. I feel like I always talk about myself, though. I never throw it back over to you, Jake. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I'm doing great. Listen, I know it was a bummer. It was a bummer of a game, obviously, which we'll get into in all the news and talk about how the boys did on opening night. But hey, hockey is back. We're finally getting into the swing of the things. That's what I'm most excited about. And I'm just glad, we've got some consistent good shows to start pumping out now, right, Matt? We can talk about some Lightning hockey, no more of those, let's talk about jerseys today. It's hockey Lightning content. So that's the exciting thing. But before we get into the game, we have a little bit of news to talk about. I think the first thing we should do is the Ian Cole news. So for those of you that don't know, there was some allegations put out by a Twitter user about Ian Cole and sexual assault allegations. And obviously this was a very big deal. It blew up on Twitter, and the Lightning eventually came out and they said, we know about it. We are looking into it, but Ian Cole will be suspended for the time being while the investigation is going on. It is with pay as well. I know a lot of people were asking about that, but he is still getting paid during this suspension. The update here is that Cole met with NHL security in an in-person interview in New York. I believe it was right after the Lightning game. And they've now had that interview. There's been no update since the interview, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it does show the investigation is currently ongoing. They're starting to talk to people. And Matt, I believe you told me that the NHL is also trying to get in contact with the person who put out the allegations on Twitter, correct?
Correct, yes. As far as I know, they're just trying to reach out to the account owner and just have a conversation, just try to get to the bottom of this. Of course, this is a very confusing, unwanted scenario for everybody involved, but
Right.
Again, it's hairy. There's just really nothing anybody can do about it. We just kind of have to bide our time, and honestly, it sucks to say, but just kind of at least ignore it for the time being, but keep it on the back burner. We want to get this resolved as soon as possible, for better or for worse, but again, we just gonna have to kind of bide our time for it.
Yeah, you said it right there. Hopefully it's not true. We obviously don't want any of that to be real, but if it is, hopefully the Lightning deal with it accordingly and it gets taken care of. But we also want the NHL to do a good job of the investigation, right? Don't leave anything unturned. We don't want anybody getting shafted in this investigation or something like that. So, but that is the update for right now. Of course, we will continue to update you guys as we hear more, but that is the current situation with Ian Cole. The other piece of news that we need to get into before we start talking about the game is that the Lightning re-upped their contract with the Syracuse Crunch for them to be the AHL affiliate. So 5 more years of the Crunch being the AHL team for the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is pretty cool. I know that Syracuse Crunch have been a long-standing partner with the Lightning, and they've had a good relationship with them, and it's good to see that is continuing here for the next 5 years, Matt.
Oh yeah, I'm a big Crunch guy. Every now and then I'll try to tune into some games, but I think they just kind of suit each other perfectly. I mean, Syracuse has been a huge part of the, minor league affiliate for the Lightning for the longest time now. I'm happy to see 5 more years of Syracuse hockey.
I would love to watch more Crunch games, but they are so hard to watch. I don't know if you're able to do it or how you do it, but because I think you have to pay pay for a subscription or something
Illegally.
to be able to watch them, right? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I got you. You go on that certain website, right?
Yes.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, the
They
AHL
are
could
hard
do
to
it.
find even with, these very reliable sites. They're,
Yeah.
they're few and far between. Every now and then they'll do like free games a little bit more often than the NHL will. They'll do like 2 a year free games. The AHL they'll do a couple, probably like anywhere between like 5 to 6 free games a year too. So I'll have my notifications on for that.
There you go. That's smart. I would love to watch more, but unfortunately, it's just tough to do.
Mhm.
I am hoping to get to some Solar Bear games this year. I'm excited for that season getting around the corner because I'm currently in Orlando, so definitely trying to get to some of those games. But the Lightning have had some great partnerships for all of their affiliate teams. And we're getting 5 more years of the Syracuse Crunch. So some cool news there. But let's get into the news that everybody's here for, wanting to talk. Well, maybe not you're here for because it was an unfortunate game. But the Lightning did officially kick off their season against the New York Rangers last night, Tuesday, as of this recording. And unfortunately, the Lightning dropped this one by a final score of 3-1. And Matt, I'll give my thoughts on the game first, my overall thoughts, and then I'll get yours, and we'll go into some of the details of this game. But I thought overall, as a whole, the Lightning weren't that bad. I really liked what they did in the first period. The game was tied 0-0. Even heading into the end of the second, the game was tied 1-1. It didn't look all that bad. They were making some good plays. They were getting some pressure. They gave the Rangers some chances too, but they were looking good defensively, even with both Hayden Fleury and Philippe Myers in the lineup as well. They were playing well, but it was the special teams that killed the Lightning. They did have one 5-on-3 goal, which was good, but they only went 1 for 6 at the end of the day on the power play, which when you have guys like Stamkos, Hedman, Kucherov, Braden Point, going 1 for 6 is just not good whatsoever. And then the penalty kill wasn't that great either. Despite the Rangers only getting 1 goal on the power play, they still generated a lot of chances every other power play, and it hurt the Lightning a lot taking all those penalties. So special teams for me was the ultimate killer in this game.
And not to mention the opening goal, which was a shorthanded goal. Like,
That's right.
it really was a special teams game. You would have thought with the corny, cheesy puck drop ref announcement thing at the start of the game, you would have thought that the Lightning would know that this is the regular season and not preseason anymore. I semi agree with you saying that, I thought they played pretty good early on in the game, just kind of feeling each other out. Nobody really wanting to take chances here and there, but it just seemed to really tail off. Not that they were overwhelmed, but it just kind of seemed like, they didn't really, nobody was really trying their hardest. We all know this team has so much more to give. They were just bad, sloppy passes, just, playing without purpose, and I get MSG is a hard building to play in. That crowd was rocking that night, but if there's any team that could just silence the crowd and put it behind them, it's the Lightning. I mean, shoot, they in the playoffs, that building's twice as loud. Same thing with the Islanders building, and they just kind of tune it out rather easily. And not that the crowd got to them at all or anything like that, but I don't know. They almost looked outmatched when that, the teams looked fairly fair on paper, but New York was just kind of coming at them in waves. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll still tip my cap to Vasilevsky. I thought he was the better of the 2 goalies, especially when you consider that they pretty much doubled up the shot totals. I couldn't tell you what the end of the day shots were, but I know it was almost double. And Vasilevsky, I thought he had a really good game. He just got, beat cleanly on all 3 of those goals. I mean, that tip, what are you going to do? The shorthanded goal, the special team unit kind of gave up on him. And then, Mika Zibanejad, he's just got the ability to go beast mode. As much as I hate the Rangers, I respect Mika Zibanejad, and he's a terrific player. But there just was not that spark. There was not the energy there. As beautiful, as wonderful as I think Nikita Kucherov is, it was, one good play for every two bad plays, which we've honestly kind of grown a little accustomed to. It takes him a little bit to really kick it on. He kind of decides when he wants to, but just nobody really seemed to be in sync. And I'm just talking down to the lines. Like the lines were not meshing. We saw the big three line as well, which I know Michael on the Bolt Report show we did, he was not too big of a fan of that big three line with Point, Stamkos, and Kucherov. And I gotta say, after that first showing, I wasn't either. I know I'm kind of rambling on here a little bit. I've kind of probably
No, go for it, man.
covered a lot, but yeah, for opening night, I mean, I guess it wasn't as bad as last year's opening night, if that's any better. But um, I don't know. It just nobody really seemed to be gelling, and I'm not gonna look too much into this. It just sucks that it was against the Rangers. Sucks that it was a nationally broadcast,
Right.
game, and they embarrassed us. Honestly, they did.
Well, and listen, it's game 1 of 82, so
Mhm.
obviously there is absolutely no reason to panic whatsoever. We've seen this from how many times have the Lightning had a bad start to the season and then finished, top of their division, won a Stanley Cup. They did it in that first year in 2020. So this is nothing out of the norm for the Lightning. Which, by the way, I found it funny that ESPN mentioned the Lightning had one of the best records in opening night games. And then I think it was tied 1-1 at that point, and then the Rangers proceeded to take it to us. So
Ugh.
really, I blame ESPN for this loss.
They're the
They're the
easiest
ones that
scapegoat
screwed
for
us.
me.
But actually, I do want to give credit to ESPN. I know a lot of people hate on them. I thought they did a decent job covering the game. I didn't have any major issues with it. Might be a little bit of a hot take, but you mentioned Andre Vasilevsky. Here are some of those stats. So he had 36 saves on 39 shots. He was fantastic. Meanwhile, Shesterkin had 27 saves. Or 25 saves, excuse me, on 26 shots. So Vasilevsky, excellent as he always is. Sergachev was a weird one for me. He had a couple of bad moments, but then I believe he was the one that also somehow fought off one of the Rangers forwards and held them until Vasilevsky could get over and make that huge save, and that probably saved a goal there. So Sergachev, again, like, half of it's like, what is this guy doing? Did we really just give him a giant contract? And then the other half was like, thank goodness we gave him this giant contract. He looks fantastic. So
Mhm.
hopefully as he settles into the season, we start to see more of the latter there and that he gets better and better. But a kind of 50-50 from Sergachev. You mentioned the big three as well. That's another line too, where you just never know what you're going to get. Like, we've seen times where the big three goes out there and they just dominate, and it's just not even fair. And then we also see, like what we saw last night, right? Just couldn't get much going. They had a couple shots here and there. Stamkos did have a goal, although that was on the power play, but just not much going. So it just kind of seems like you never know what you're going to get from them. I'm sure Cooper will, use the line blender in these first week or two of the season to try and figure out what works best there, but not great for them. I did really like Brandon Hagel's play in this game. I thought he was really, really good. He drew like 3 penalties. He's the one that drew 2 penalties
in
on
one
one play, which is so rare and so impressive to do. And even though he didn't score or get on the board in the points department, I thought he still played a really good game. So really happy with Brandon Hagel's first game. And then I mentioned this earlier, Philippe Myers and Hayden Fleury, I thought both played well, and we're going to need them to going forward with Bogosian out, with Cole still out during the suspension right now. We don't know how long that's going to be, but I really liked what I saw from Hayden Fleury and Philippe Myers. Matt, any thoughts on those guys?
I didn't notice Myers a whole lot. Just, I guess that's all you can really ask for of a defenseman. But Hayden
Right.
Fleury,
Sometimes it is.
he stood out to me. There were a couple of plays that I thought were just good for a young fledgling defenseman, but there were also a couple that just kind of shake the rust off. You're in the big leagues now, but it wasn't anything
Right.
abhorrent like, oh God, get him off the team, nothing like that. I thought the defense actually played rather well. Again, it does come down to the special teams units. The penalty kill was just flat out bad. You know how many shots they had on just their power plays?
I don't know off the
It
top
was
of my head.
over 16. I know
Oh,
that.
wow.
And I think they had an extra power play after I heard that stat. So, pretty much half of all of the Rangers' offense came in their few power plays.
Right. And
But
mostly the reason they didn't score was because of Vasilevsky.
And this was honestly an issue for the Lightning in the playoffs too. It was the special teams. I think honestly that's kind of what came down to them uh, losing to the Avalanche. But it was an issue with. It seems like every other team that they faced, minus Florida, that was just a stomping. But with the Leafs, it was like, okay, we can beat them 5-on-5. Same thing with the Rangers. If we can
You're
keep them
right.
off the
I
power
remember
play,
that.
we got them. The Avalanche was just a different story. Their power play was a little too lethal. And again, what are you going to do? But some of the penalties were a little ridiculous. But again, if they can just kind of clean everything up, and I get you've got new faces, new faces, but that power play has remained essentially the same. I don't think the first unit has any changes on it. It kind of depends who the
Brendan Hagel to the power play. Brendan Hagel to the power play.
I mean, the first unit kind of had, Killorn or Andre Palat, who's no longer a factor, as that fourth forward on the first power play. But other than that, like, it's just kind of standard business, and there was just nothing going on the entire time. So I know that there's a lot more we can drag out of this team. It's probably just a motivation issue. It's a hard building to play in. Again, do not read too much into this. It sucks we lost to the Rangers. I can't stress that enough, but again, I cannot stress enough how much you just shouldn't look into it, because there were spots that, they did look good. There was a long stretch pass from Stamkos from the far blue line to catch Kucherov on a breakaway, and Kucherov did everything right. It was a good play, but whoever the Rangers defenseman was caught right up to him and stuffed that chance away. He still managed to get a shot off. It was just nothing quality. But at the end of the day, I just think Igor had a very, very easy night, which is just unacceptable, really, especially when you've got
Right.
one of the best goaltenders in the world, second to this guy Vasilevsky. You have to, even if they're bad shots, you just kind of have to pepper him a little bit. You got to keep him tested, because there were a couple of opportunities that if they really got a shot off, I think they would have beat him. But I hate to use the old Cooper term, they beat themselves.
Well, I mean, they did. I mean, they really like that shorthanded goal they gave up. I mean, that's something you just can't do. And again, we've been saying it. It's game 1 of 82. There's a long way to go, but we love this team. We want to see them play their best every single night, and they didn't play their best. So we'll see how they bounce back in this game coming up against Columbus. I want to read you a stat, Matt, that's kind of shocking. This player gets a lot of hate, a lot. One of the players that's been on the trade block by fans anyway, almost every single year. You probably know who I'm talking about at this point. Correct. Alex Killorn. So Killorn did not have a good game last night. I was especially mad at him because I may or may not have bet on him to get 2 shots on goal, and he might have ruined that certain bet. But anyway, Matt, how many games do you think it has been since he has had a goal? How many games since Alex Killorn's last goal? And this is obviously including the playoffs last year.
I'm going to go 31.
Oh, you're close. It's 29 games.
Oh,
He is in a 29 game scoring drought. And then how many without a point?
it's going to be a lot less, but because I know he was not great in the playoffs again. Away from the puck, he's a good player, but in the playoffs, he was just, again, good away from the puck, but with the puck, not so good. I think he had like 4 assists in the playoffs, so I'll say like 9 games.
18.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no. Killorn has not had a good stretch at all recently. So listen, Killorn, buddy, if you're listening to the podcast, we love you. You should come on the podcast if you are listening to it. But we need you to step it up a little bit. We need some.
You don't have to tell him that, because he actually did come out with a quote a couple of days ago. Somebody asked him about his playoff performance and how he had 0 goals and minimal offensive help. And he said, if that's the case this year, fire me out of a cannon, get me out of here. Like I just probably won't play
know that.
something like that. It's not exactly what he said, but it was
Right, right.
very similar. He was being, emphatic about it, but it
Well,
was
that's
along
good
those
that
lines.
he's aware of it. And
Absolutely.
to be fair to him, there weren't many players that stood out last night in that game against
Mhm.
the Rangers. So it wasn't just him, but Killorn is definitely going through a slump right now, and hopefully he's able to break out of that slump soon.
And to me, it's kind of odd because the last 2 to 3 years, he's had career years. I know
Yeah,
the COVID
he
shortened
was great in the
season
regular season last year.
he had something like 26 goals or something. Like, if we played throughout the whole season, he was on pace for over 30 goals. And in the season after, the shortened season, the 56-game season, he cracked the 20-goal mark as well, so another 30-goal pace. Last season, I think he cracked 20 goals as well. He was at like 25 or something, and, that was a full 82 games. I don't think he missed much time, if any. But he's been very, very consistent, very good. I remember last year, I was honestly begging one of my buddies to trade me him in fantasy, or actually, he was a waiver pickup. And I was like, oh, like he picked him up the day I was going to do it. I was like, okay, I'll trade you so and so. Like, I was kind of begging for Alex Killorn last year. So it is very, night and day, the difference, once the playoffs started, kind of, because it really was.
He had 59 points in 82 games last season.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's impressive. It was so 59 points. That's his highest point total in his career. He broke his career record in points. I think he was a couple shy of goals because he scored 25 goals last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one shy of that because he scored 26 in 2020 in that 2019 to 2020 season.
Okay.
And then I believe he was up there for assists too. I think he broke that record. Yeah, he passed his record in assists and points and was one shy of tying it in goals last year. And then has hit this major drought.
We know he's got it in him. Like, I'm not sure what it is. Because, again, he looks fine to me. It doesn't look like he's hurting. We know he's a warrior. And he's honestly just kind of an unsung hero on this team at a lot of turns. Like, he honestly reminds me a lot of Andre Palat. He's a very clutch performer, especially in the regular season. But he doesn't have that same bite, snap that Palat does in the playoffs. So it really might have to be Killorn this playoffs. I know I'm speaking way, 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 way too early. We're in game 2 of 82, but it might have to be him to step up in the playoffs to kind of, prove people wrong. Hasn't that kind of been the MO for this team the last 4 years, is proving the doubters wrong? I mean, after the 2019 sweep, sorry to bring it up, we had to prove them wrong that no, we're a championship team. After Stamkos did not win, or, he played one game in the first cup run, he had to prove, no, I am still a viable forward. And even after the second cup run where he played every game, he was a little shy under a point a game. People were like, okay, he's just a power play specialist. Actually show us you're a superstar. And he was 5th in league scoring last year. The MO the last 4 years have been proving people wrong. And I think the Killorn situation's a little bit more internal. It's not a news story anywhere. It's not overblown, but it is becoming, it's becoming a factor.
Well, hopefully he starts to pick it back up and doesn't continue this slump for too long. But I think you hit it on the head. We know he has it in him. He can do it. So it's probably only a matter of time before he starts to get back at it. But enough about the loss that we had. Let's preview some of the upcoming games before we come back and do our next podcast. The Lightning have 2 games coming up. And first one is going to be on Friday against the Columbus Blue Jackets at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then they're actually having a back-to-back here. That's the first half of the back-to-back. And then on Saturday, October 15th at 7 p.m., they are playing the Penguins. So crazy that the Lightning already have a back-to-back coming up this early in the season, but still a little bit of a road trip to go here coming up before they have their home opener on Tuesday, October 18th, again at 7 p.m. Eastern. So starting with Columbus, though, this is a game that's going to be interesting because Columbus, obviously now with Johnny Gaudreau, that team looks a lot different. But one on paper, you would imagine the Lightning should have some success in. And the Lightning have been really good, as we all know. in not losing back-to-back games. So I would expect the Lightning to come out swinging pretty heavily in this game against Columbus.
I'd bet the over all the way. I mean, I'm excited to see Columbus. I'm excited to see what a healthy Patrick Laine, along with the fresh-faced Johnny Gaudreau, look like. Again, as much of a fan of the Tampa Bay Lightning I'm a fan of the NHL as well. So of course I don't want them to do their magic against my team, but it's always fun to watch. But I am totally 100% expecting a much, much better performance, similar to the one we saw against Columbus in the second to last game of the season, or the third to last game last season, because we played them back to back and lost one. But the one before, it was rather dominant. It was something like 5-1. So that's what I'm expecting to see, because again, we know this team, if they can do anything, they can bounce back.
Absolutely. And the score was 4-1, by the way. I just pulled up this. You were close, almost at it.
It was dominant, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, another game like that would be fantastic, and I know it would put a lot of Lightning fans at ease, even though it's super early in the season. The tough part of this is that second half of the back-to-back. I mean, they're playing in Pittsburgh, and listen, the Penguins, even though they haven't gotten deep in the playoffs for a while now, they are still a very star-studded team. They've been able to keep a lot of their core together. They're always competitive. And going up against them in a back-to-back is going to be a tall task. Actually, now that I think about it, it'll be interesting to see if we see Brian Elliott play against Columbus and then Vasilevsky against Pittsburgh. Just based on a matchup perspective, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I also know Vasilevsky tends to play a lot of the game, the first game of the back-to-back and not the second one. I think Brian Elliott is absolutely capable of beating the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's been a fantastic goaltender for us. We talked about this recently, and he could definitely do it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Elliott against Columbus on Friday and then Vasilevsky on Saturday, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out and what John Cooper does there.
It's been a while since I've been this confident in our goalie tandem. It's one thing when you got Vasilevsky, but who's behind him? Again, I like Curtis McElhinney. He's a great, great guy, but you could never be totally confident with him. You'd be like,
right.
Oh, I'd prefer he play Columbus just because they seem like the weaker opponent, type of deal. But with me, it's honestly I could honestly have it either way. I know Columbus is a good team. I know Pittsburgh is a good team. Obviously, I'm going to give the nod to Pittsburgh being the better team, but honestly, I'm kind of either or I'm fine with.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And it is really nice to have some confidence in your backup goaltender. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And then obviously we get the home opener against the Philadelphia Flyers. That's a nice home opener to have, right? The projected worst team in the NHL. We should beat up on although the Lightning play some really weird games against the Flyers. Everybody's got that one team that's just always a weird game no matter what. That's the Flyers for the Lightning. I remember how many times have they had a 6-7 score, or they win it in overtime, or a ridiculously long shootout. There's always something weird with those Flyers games.
I know the couple last year were pretty brutal for the for the Flyers. We kind of took them to town. But I remember there was one time, I think it was in the 28 or 17-18 season. I couldn't find, I was at work, so I couldn't really watch the game. So I was listening to the game the entire time with Dave and Phil. And it was, score, score, score. It was a 6-7 shootout win. I remember because it was one of the only times I've listened from start to finish on the radio broadcast, and was just completely, submersed into it. Just absolutely just, felt like I was in the 50s or something, just, watching on my radio or listening on my radio. But I just remember that game so distinctly that, it was Victor Hedman that won it in the shootout. I'm pretty sure. I know he scored, but I think he won it in the shootout. That's just one game that sticks out to me. Sorry to not drive the conversation any further.
No, you're good. Yeah, but it has. You're right though. Those games have been. That was a really fun game to watch and listen to, and could be in for a treat again. So, and that's one of those things too. Even though we say Philly's projected to be one of the worst teams in the NHL, listen, this is the NHL. John Tortorella is now coaching the Flyers. You never know. The Flyers could make the playoffs this year. That is a very crazy take right there, but you never know, right? You never know.
That's a hot one.
Teams. Yeah. Well,
but Torts hockey is never easy.
Exactly. And early in the season, you don't know what teams are going to be like. We can make our informed predictions, as much as we can, but you just don't know. You don't know. On paper, it is absolutely the one that you think the Lightning should dominate, but don't get ahead of yourself is all I'm saying. Be ready for it. But a couple of exciting games, and we'll have a lot more to talk about, obviously, in the next episode of the podcast. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun one. And, the only thing that stinks about it, Matt, is that there's so much of a gap in between these games. We've got a 2-day gap in between this one, and then we have the back-to-back, but then another 2-day gap before we play Philly, and then another 2-day gap after that. What the heck is up with the schedule, man?
Well, I think we've all become so used to the very condensed schedule of the NHL that we're finally back into not even, but a mostly regular season. So the games will be a little bit more spaced out. They're not going to be, every other night or back to back and then every other night like they were the last couple of years, just to fill as little time as possible. So the season will be a little bit longer, in terms of days, same amount of games though. So
absolutely.
It's too long for me though. I need back-to-backs every night.
Right. I know. I need to be like baseball and play every single night. I always want to be watching the boys. Hey though, if you guys realize by this opening night, if you opened up your closet and said, hey man, I need some new Lightning shirts, what the heck's going on? I need to get some more. Be sure to go check out the shop over here at RBLR. We've got some awesome merchandise for you guys to go check out. The link is always in the description, so you can go there and head over and check out all the different cool shirts that we have. There's also a ton for the other sports as well. It's not just Lightning gear, so make sure you go stock up as we get the season officially underway, and you can use code BOLTS for 10% off your order. That's a little special thing for all of you listeners that are still hanging out with us. We really appreciate it, by the way. If you could do just one thing for us, though, be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at RBLR Sports, and then give us a like, give us a follow, that rating, whatever it may be on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. So thank you guys very much, and be sure to go check out the shop and use code BOLTS for 10% off your order. Matt, anything else that we need to talk about before we get ready to wrap up the show here?
Well, I hate to spoil things, but if you've made it this far and you're still liking what you're hearing, I'd say be on the lookout for a new podcast coming from the Bolt Report, and it features yours truly and Eureka behind the camera here as well.
Yes, sir.
Giving us our pre-regular season insights just over on a different perspective. So be on the lookout for that video to drop sometime in the next week.
Absolutely. It'll be out very soon. Looking forward to that. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys next week to talk some more Lightning hockey. Go Bolts.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.